Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of 25 to 1, where I chronicle the journey of taking my $25,000 a year business to 1 million. Today is a little bit of a special episode. As you guys know, I bought this business about 8 months ago now from a guy named Les Weber. So today I wanted to take a step back from the business a bit with Les's help and talk more about the subject of my store, which is baseball. Les did me the favor of sitting down for an interview, and that's what I'll present today. And I will say it was cool. He threw in some tidbits of baseball history, some names that I had to go do some Google searches on, and just the memories of how people would dress when going to games, or how there was only one channel on the TV, and if it wasn't the Yankees, you weren't watching anything. Overall, I think a super cool interview and a cool opportunity to chronicle my journey in a different way, which is with the help of the previous owner, the guy who started the business, and his love and passion for baseball. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, well, glad you're doing well, at least better. Yeah, and super happy that you're able to take some time, as you saw on screen recording here. So just wanted to do a couple things. First is, I don't think we've ever really had a conversation about baseball in general, but also, wanted to give you an opportunity to, leave your mark and to say your piece and to have that recorded, forever.
Well, that's very, very nice of you. I appreciate that. So thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not very important anymore, but I do appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Well, yeah, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your history with baseball. Let's start there.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Nebraska and on a farm. Everybody was farm kids back then. And I played Pee Wee baseball when I was 8. So that was the first year, and I really loved it. I loved it. But I never got to go back after that because I was a big kid when I was small, and I was big enough to work on the farm. So I never got to play baseball anymore. But that didn't diminish my love for the game. So, and I can remember as a big family on Sunday afternoon gathering in front of a not so hot black and white TV and watching the Yankees, and they were being announced by Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese. And I can still hear those two guys. They were absolutely what entertainment. And then also those years were when the big home run thing was going on, and Mickey Mantle, and the Yankees and Yogi Berra, they were all my heroes. So that's how I got started. And then I sort of lost baseball until I started having a family, and my oldest son, grew up at about 6 or 7. He started throwing the ball really hard, and I'm going, well, maybe this will be a baseball player. And so we kind of got him going, and then that rekindled my interest in baseball. So I started to do some collecting and all that, and I'm really a big history fan of baseball.
Mhm.
So I bought a lot of old gloves. And finally, my wife said one day, she said, "What are you going to do with all these?" And I go, I don't know. I get them out, look at them once a year. So she said, "Why don't you find something to do with those?" And so my sister was living here at the time, and I said, "Do you think we could make a wallet out of one of these baseball gloves?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. Let's try it." So I took one apart and I tried to figure out how to, do all those things that you need to do in order to get leather ready in order to be used. And I used to press the gloves underneath the wheels of my car, get a couple of boards and drive on it. And then, we sort of got going, and in fact, I have the original wallet that we made right here. This is the original wallet that was made, and you can see there's several different kinds of stitching on it.
Yeah,
And I carried this one for a number of years, and then I thought, well, it's time to retire this one. So, but anyway,
cool.
she started making them, and I started selling them, and we found out that there was a big demand, that a lot of people my age and younger and some older had vivid memories of baseball. And so basically what we trade on is or traded on was it would be nostalgia. you know
Mhm.
there's very few young kids that don't grow up playing softball or baseball anymore. At least it's for a couple of years, maybe 7 8 t-ball or something like that. And other kids go on to play, in Little League, and it's just the time of their life. And when they live next to a big league park, that's an experience that I never got to have.
Yeah.
So but anyway, that's the way we started making wallets, and we kind of worked out. We had a lot of systems, and things we had to put in place in order for it to come out right. We had to learn how to stitch just right and so forth and so on. So that's basically how we got started. And then my sister left, and then I had two friends that did my final stitching for me, but I was still taking apart all the gloves and pressing them and cutting them out, and stitching the fingers together. And then I would kind of cut the wallet out and send it off to those two people to final stitch for me, because their touch was much better than mine. So when you start doing everything by hand, why, it's all about, do you want to do a good job?
Yeah, actually, let me show you something. So yeah, I have a couple things. There's one of your you have, by the way, you have so many fans on the website. People are always sending me messages like, tell Les I said hi. Hope him and Nancy are doing well.
Yeah, I've made a lot of friends over the years.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a very unexpected thing to also inherit, right? Is those relationships that I
Right.
didn't realize
Yeah.
were coming with the store.
Right.
But it's also super nice because it makes me want to make sure I'm always doing my best for them as well, right?
Sure. Sure.
Um, so one of the new things that I have going on here is someone had asked for a passport holder.
Oh,
So
yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, and so I have never made one. I found a guy who, is a leather worker. He's gonna put it
Right.
together for me, but this is from a Mickey Mantle glove, and
Oh, cool.
it's just like I do not want to mess this up. So I'm gonna send it to a professional to put it together. I'll do the design, right? But
Yeah, well, maybe for your first one, you ought to pick something a little less in demand.
yeah, exactly. So, and I do, and like you have so many things that people ask about all the time. Like this is like a style of a fastback purse. So I've never made
Right.
one. I don't really know how they're made, but
Yeah.
it's been interesting to like, all right, so I can take this apart and end up with
Right.
like a bunch of leather. But
Right.
um the hard part is really being creative with like how to put it all together, right?
Right.
In a
Right.
in a consumable
And
way, a
when
way
you
that's
sit down, you have to really have some time in order to, to kind of stare at the thing for a while and say, well, what can I make here? How can I get the most leather and keep the signature in the center someplace, and what's going to happen on the outsides and so forth. It does take some time. Yeah, it does. So, and it's a little bit of an engineering thing.
yeah.
So we didn't just start out guns blazing. Believe me, we started out pretty slow. So,
Yeah, how did you start selling them?
well, I basically just started with a Facebook page, and I had a lot of friends, that were in baseball. My son played professionally for 10 years, and so we've met a lot of people in baseball. So, and then I started posting them on there for sale, and boom, everybody wanted one. They were just gone. So I thought, well, maybe there's something here. So that's how we kind of streamlined our process and thought how we could, work a little bit smarter instead of quite so hard. So
Mhm.
you have to kind of be an artist, really. You have
Yeah.
to have a creative thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, and sometimes you just start. you know, you take the biggest piece you can get and you just start.
Right.
And then you sort of change it as you go. So
Yeah.
those purses, exactly, they're not hard to make. Hold that back up. Okay. Well, the thumb's got to come off.
Right. Right.
So you take the thumb off and then you stitch those fingers together. You put first of all, you got to flatten the glove so you got flat, so you don't have those ridges.
Hmm.
Okay, and then you want to stitch those fingers together,
Yeah.
and then after that you just line it and put it together. So it's
Yeah.
basic.
I've always meant to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you would flatten by driving it over with your car. Is that the
Right?
latest technique?
No, no. I bought a no, yeah. That was too much work. So I bought a press, a small press, like a small garage press, hydraulic,
Okay.
H frame, and then I used wood, and then I also used some plate metal in between those. I'd have like a plate, and then some gloves, and then a wood hard plywood piece, and then another metal plate, a little thin plate, and then a couple of big heavy plates on the top. And then you could just really pound it down, and you just put the pressure on it. And pressure and time is what gets you flat.
I see.
Now you can, if they're a little dry and stiff, you can add just a little bit of moisture to them. That helps.
Hmm.
But before you put them on there, I always roll up the fingers backwards.
Okay.
and then I wet them just before I roll them up. So you would take that and roll it, yeah, towards you.
Yep.
Exactly. Seeing it and see how you're rolling out the edges.
Yep. Right.
Just take a little spray bottle and wet them down, then roll them up, leave them for a couple days, then put them in the press, and then you'll come out with pancakes just flat.
Yeah,
So,
cool, cool. One of the trivia questions that I had for you was more about what you think in terms of baseball history, the different leagues that have existed, what you've experienced, growing up and as you mentioned, just your time with baseball. What are a couple things that you think are important for people to know about baseball?
well, I think one of the huge things is that guys played baseball because they loved to play baseball back in those days, especially in the pre-World War II time, in the 30s and 40s. They played baseball because they loved baseball. They didn't play baseball for money. In fact, all those people had jobs in the off season, every one of them. And you can go back and you can find out what Mickey Mantle did. Even Mickey Mantle did in the off season, or Walter Johnson, or any of those old guys. They had to have a job. So I think the money in the game is what really changed it. It was a nice little business for people that really love baseball, but now it's a giant business. And anytime you have that kind of money driving the decisions of what happens, today with media and everything, it changes the game. But it's not all bad. The players today are much more developed than they ever were back then. They were just, for example, Bob Feller. The only reason he said he could ever throw 100 miles an hour was he used to throw hay all summer and then play baseball. Well, that's where he got his strength. These kids today are all conditioned. They're brought up conditioned, and they play well and they understand the game well. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Those kids, by the time they get through college or get through high school, some of them, they're very developed. They've seen more in baseball than a lot of people did in their whole career. So yeah, the skill level is rocketing.
Yeah.
You take a guy like Judd or Owatani, and look at their physique. I can remember Thad coming home, and he was pitching in a Yankees game. That was when he was with the Blue Jays, and he was in Yankee Stadium, and he walked out there and he walked by Alex Rodriguez, and he said, "I had no idea that guy was that tall." He said, "He's a big man." I said, "Yeah, he is." He said, "Well, you don't notice it until you're on the field so much." But he said he got out there and he said, "Oh my gosh, I just couldn't believe it." So
Yeah.
till you're out there on that field, you really don't understand that. I don't think it's hard to do that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's funny. I have always peripherally been around baseball. I would go to games. Like I never really knew what the record was of any team. But here's a funny question that I have for you. So my family's from Chicago.
Uh-huh.
So I had a childhood there, but I spent many adult years, 15 years in DC. So we
Mm-hmm.
got the Cubs, we got the Nats, and that in DC is where I went probably to the most baseball games. But since I've been here in Seattle, this is really where I've spent like my more mature years. So what kind of advice would you give to someone like trying to decide between three loves?
You know what? I never been a one-team person. We we watched what we could see. I mean, we had one channel, it was black and white, and you either watched the Yankees or you didn't watch anybody. And so then that kind of changed as time went on. And then, we got WGN, which was before the days of, hardly even be just beginning cable. And so then we became Cubs fans. Well, then the Royals started to get a little better. And then back when they had George Brett, they won that World Series, the I-70 series. And, everybody kind of flocked to them now. So, but I really don't have any clear-cut favorites. I mean, obviously, my son works for the Cubs. I like the Cubs, and I've always liked the Cubs.
Mhm.
But Kansas City, I like all the teams really.
Yeah.
I mostly cheer for small market teams.
Mhm.
You take like a Milwaukee or someplace like that, that just doesn't have a giant budget like the
But
Yankees and
yeah.
a lot of those teams do. So, and I like the National League. And my last bastion of hope was what they were going to make pitchers still hit. And when they took that away, I was, I'm really sad now, but that was a big part of the game back in the early day. So,
Yeah.
um, I was a fan of the Cardinals, who didn't love Bob Gibson, I mean, man, he was the meanest guy out there, and you loved it. He would stare people into giving up, and so yeah, great entertainment. It was great entertainment. So
Yeah. Cool. This sounds political, but I kind of want to make it maybe meta political. You see what's happening today. We have the election around the corner. I'm curious, like how you've seen politics change over time.
well, there's been dramatic changes in my lifetime.
Mhm.
I think early on there was respect for people in government and political office, and there was more respect person to person than there is now. I mean, out here we all say hi to each other, and we're kind of colloquial in that consideration. But uh, today people are mad. They're angry, and everybody's angry. And social media has promoted a lot of that because if you want to see something blow up, just put an unpopular thing on Facebook, and they'll just argue for days.
Yeah.
Hundreds, thousands of people will get in there and argue. It's okay. I don't care what you think. I mean, if that's what you really believe, then that's what you should do.
Mhm.
But don't tell me that everybody else is wrong. And I don't tell you you're wrong. You don't tell me I'm wrong. Let's
Yeah.
just be a little kinder and gentler to each other because that's not necessary.
Right.
You know, my dad grew up during the World War II days, and he said that people back then were very close to each other. They felt this fear, and everybody had to work, and you did everything you could to help. And if anybody was in town that didn't have something that they needed, then you helped them. That was more of a community kind of a thing now. And of course, money has gotten into baseball, and clubs used to be like that. But those guys anymore today, they play for one thing, and that's not just the money. And money's good. I understand it. They play for their teammates. That's who they really play for.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you watched the game last night, the Dodgers, that was quite a way to win there in extra innings, and those guys are like 13-year-olds, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah,
when
right.
they're celebrating, they're just like 13-year-olds.
Hmm.
Here we got 35-year-old males that are making millions of dollars, and they're acting like they're 12.
Yeah.
And isn't that a joy? Why can't we all get a little bit more joy out of something? So,
Yeah.
and that's where I hope baseball will stay, is that we can provide some joy to people.
Yeah.
You can take a group of friends and go to a game and have a few brews and some food and still have a good conversation with each other and still be attentive to the ball game.
Yeah.
Things don't move real fast. People don't get crazy normally. It's just a good social activity. And I think the minor leagues will prove that. Minor leagues today are very popular, and it's an entire entertainment experience when you go to one of those games.
Yeah.
So
I've been getting a lot of requests for custom patches for teams that I've never heard of, but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
people are starting to represent their minor league teams more.
yeah, and then they, that's gone over a large change too. MLB took over all those teams. So there's a lot less minor league teams than there used to be. So, and then there's some independent leagues. You get down south where they can play independent ball. That works out well. And then we have entertainment leagues. The Bananas, the Savannah Bananas. That's a phenomenon. It's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball.
Right.
It's just that. Those guys have some skills, but it's an entertainment thing too. So, but yeah.
Yeah, kind of a weird way to like come around to this, but one of the thoughts that I had about, knowing that I was gonna talk to you, I was sort of thinking just how kind of important baseball is to American culture. And I think it represents the American dream in one of the purest ways possible. Given like all the people that come from around the world to play, to get into the league, and the talent, it kind of represents the idea of America itself, that this is a place for everyone, right? This is what kind of the American dream can be. In the case of baseball, it's you have to work pretty hard.
Yeah, you have to have some talent, but you have to work hard, and you have to have a passion for it.
Yeah,
You can say, "Well, I'm going to work the harder that If you don't have a passion for the game, you can't keep that up.
right.
My again, my son he scouts the Central America and South America leagues, and he'll see kids down there that's all they do. If they go to school, they go to school and get out and they start playing baseball. And I don't care if it's a bottle cap and a stick, they play baseball, and they love the game, and they don't have anything. Those kids have nothing.
Mhm.
Some of those kids in Guatemala, they don't have baseballs. They don't even have socks to make a baseball. And so the love for the game is genuine, and can you play it for the love of the game is what you play for. And then if you can make some place in the world for yourself, in which you can, and the baseball world will accept you. If you can play baseball, they don't care if you're green, blue, or
Right,
purple. They
right.
they want you here.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing with now is it started with Roberto Clemente. He was everybody's hero. And it was super great guy. And I think that's the kind of example that we need anymore. And there are a lot of players that are like that.
Yeah, people coming from all over the world to play baseball, you have to love the game. When it comes to sports that I would consider beautiful, sure, there's gymnastics and things like that, but like when it comes to like competitive sports, soccer is one. I'm a soccer fan, and baseball is the only other, right? Um, Football, like basket, like those are great sports. I'm not taking anything away from them, but to
Right.
consider them beautiful games is I think a
Right.
stretch. But baseball and soccer, right?
Yeah. Well, and both of those, baseball and soccer, you don't have to be a giant physical specimen in order to play the game.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're 5'7" and you have a lot of skill, you can play. You
Yeah,
can't play in the NBA or the NFL,
that's right.
but you can play in Major League Baseball. Obviously not, you have a disadvantage, but still,
Mhm.
that's where everything is possible. And every kid that ever picks up a ball and glove in the backyard thinks he's going to be in the World Series someday.
Yeah.
Listening to Freddie Freeman last night talk about how he was 5, and your backyard. Every kid does that, and you know what? That's good. You don't want to lose those dreams,
Hmm.
because adulthood is so serious. We're all, we're just trying to stay alive and do what we do, and it's good to have a little kid in us yet.
Yeah.
And so when you go out in the yard, you pick up a ball and you toss it back and forth with a son or a daughter or a friend across the street. There's just something magical about that.
Hmm.
You know, I encourage everybody to buy a glove. Just go out and buy an old glove. Go to Salvation Army, Goodwill, buy a glove,
Yep.
buy a couple of balls, and then get one of your neighbors to go out and play catch with you. It's
Yep.
amazing the joy that you will find with this simple game of throwing a ball back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, and until
Right.
I had my kids, I lost that. I'm going, well, this is really nice. So I I'm a huge fan of Field of Dreams.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
bet I've seen it 100 times, maybe more.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah, and that kind of, if you kind of read between the lines there and kind of get the character of what's going on, I think this country could learn some lessons from that.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna watch it after we're done with this
Oh,
conversation.
great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just saw an Instagram reel of a Field of Dreams quote, and I was like, gosh, was that in that movie? I need to watch the whole movie again. So
Yeah. They've that's really changed over there. After the movie was done, they kind of took it out privately, and then we visited there. You could just go out there. It
mhm.
wasn't a problem. Now they put up that big ballpark there in a complex. For teams to come in. They've kind of commercialized it, but
Yeah.
the movie is going to be there forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I've enjoyed hearing some snippets you've had about your history and like what you remember about baseball. Is there any like maybe top two times that you vividly remember being at a game or watching a game and some unexpected outcome happening?
Uh, well, I've been to a lot of games in my life, especially in the last 30, 40 years. Um, I guess I had a moment when my two youngest grandkids, we were sitting at a Toledo Mudheads game, and they came and sat on my lap, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Just a little sun peeking over. The temperature was perfect. The light was hitting the buildings across the street. The field was in perfect condition, and there was absolutely no wind, and everybody was having a good time. And I had my grandkids on my knee, and I thought, boy, this is what greater place can you be than enjoy this? I mean, you got a nice, comfortable seat. If you get thirsty or hungry, you get food and if you want to talk with somebody, there's always somebody who'll talk baseball with you. So if you just want to sit there and enjoy the silence, and enjoy the weather, I really don't have any better thing that I would like to do than that, really. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I was at a bar last night where the Dodgers game was on, and I was paying attention to the game, and my friend that I was with was like, "Are you really into baseball?" And I was like, "Kind of a new thing, I'm just getting into it." And she's like, "I call that the hot dog game." I was like, "How do you call it the hot dog game?" And she's like, "Yeah, anytime like that is the sport that I go watch, and I have a
and
hot
eat hot
dog."
dogs. Absolutely. That's part of the game, a beer and
Yeah.
a dog. That's just part of the game.
Yep,
I
that's
always
it.
liked the old days when you didn't go to the game unless you wore a suit and tie and a hat.
Right.
You go back in a ways, and they didn't wear casual clothes and shorts and t-shirts, and they dressed up to go to a game.
Yep.
And the ladies wore hats, and the men smoked cigars. And it was a different time in history. So
It's so funny. I don't know if you've been looking at the website was completely redesigned. I just put up a promo on our Instagram for 15% off koozies. And for those images, I go to AI and I'm like, AI, paint me an image of baseball from the 1940s or 1950s. And every time it's guys in like top hats and suits. Yeah.
yeah, the Library of Congress has, if you're ever looking for old material, the Library of Congress has quite a collection. You can go in there and you can have almost all that stuff for free.
Oh,
And you
cool.
can get some little snippets of history of baseball out of there. And obviously they don't want you to just use the whole thing for to make money. But if you use a snippet, that's what I used to use for a lot of advertisements,
Yeah.
were snippets from the Hall of Fame and the museum there. So
Yeah, I'll check it out. It's funny. The conversation that we were having kind of parallels sort of what is happening with the business, right? Like it starts with this pure love and joy of the sport, the game, and then it turns into something commercialized. So right now I'm trying to figure out like, is like what can we do more with like I'm thinking like there's a whole bunch of different wallet types. Like I'm thinking making
right,
passport holders. I'm thinking of making shoes out of baseball leather, right?
right, right,
But like that's not because I love baseball so much, but more because I
right.
bought this business from you and I want to think of like how to grow it.
Sure.
So I do also want to make sure that, and I think one of the things that really speaks to me is that when we first had our conversation about entertaining the idea of buying the business, we were both kind of old fashioned, right? Like we can do a handshake deal and kind of trust each other.
Right.
So there are certain values that I felt made this very comfortable for me. But I'm also curious, like what you want to make sure that, or at least to the extent possible that you just want to carry forward.
For me, I don't think I just sort of borrowed baseball for a while for a lot of enjoyment and to make some decent money. And to leave a legacy for me of anything on when it was a game, I don't think so. Let the young guys take over. I had my turn at the can. I kicked the can for a while. Now it's your turn.
Yeah.
And if it goes on, fine. If it doesn't, things die after a while sometimes.
Mhm.
But I really don't have any personal legacy that I want to go on. It's just that I was always just trying to foster a love for baseball.
Yeah.
And for those that loved baseball, then we had something in common, you know.
Yeah.
I would get on the phone with a bunch of guys down at the old VFW club, and we'd talk about Mickey Mantle, for a half an hour on the phone, passing the phone around. I'm going, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And you meet lots of people.
Mhm.
Baseball people in general, especially older people, are very kind people mostly. And you know what? You can't fake a love for the game. Somebody will find you out.
Yep.
You know, I mean, you don't have to know everything about the game, but if you don't really have some pretty deep interest in the game, the real baseball people will pick you out and just pick you apart. So,
Right.
but if you're serious, I always think first of all, be honest. Try and be as honest as you can, and that keeps the number of problems to a minimum. I'm sort of aware of some things going on with Amazon and eBay, and I've been involved, where you sell things and buy things and all that. And you run into a lot of really nasty people.
Yep.
And that always bothered me.
Yep.
And for all the wallets and stuff I sold, I ran into very few really nasty people. You're going to find some.
Yeah.
But I always erred on the side of the customer. If I could make the customer happy and I didn't make any money or I lost a little money,
Yep.
that's my responsibility.
Right.
And if you treat people right, people will treat you right.
I agree. Yep.
And I think that's those are business principles that aren't taught much anymore and that really should be.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's tough these days to just be a regular kind of person. Like I said, agreeing on hey, we just made a deal on a handshake, right? Like,
Right.
Not very common these days.
No.
Good reason.
After I quit farming, I got MS. I worked in the bank for 10 years and I got really good at reading people. If I could sit down and look at you in the eye and have a little conversation, I hardly ever made any mistakes,
Yeah.
But if I loan money over the phone or doing some other way, then I always run into problems.
Should have been a poker player.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, but you just kind of, well, is this person trustworthy, or what does he tell you just by talking to him? So, I'm sure you're finding that already.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Like this is my first experience with something like this. Customer service has been one of my number one priorities. The worst that I've had from people so far, at least, is just people not liking the product and wanting to send it back. And it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were expecting, but they're like, this isn't what I was expecting. I'm like, well, there's so many pictures. Not sure what you thought, but
well, and it is there is that side of the business that's very frustrating. And when you have a good day and then it spoils your day, and you have to work pretty hard at not letting you drag that down, to move on.
Right.
It only takes 1 out of 50 to really hurt you.
It's funny. I sold a Ted Williams wallet. It was like a $500 order, and then they were like, "No, I don't like these. I want to return it." And I was like, "Oh man, that's fine. I'll take it back." But then the person who had bought it was telling me, I thought that it was going to be a little flatter or whatever. She's like, "You know what? I'm going to keep the Ted Williams and I'll send another one back." So I was like, "Fine, that's great." But I was like, "Can I introduce you to Carl Yastrzemski, who actually played with Ted Williams?" I've had this Carl Yastrzemski wallet for
Carl
forever.
Yastrzemski, spell that for me.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny. It was I saw this golden opportunity for like not an upsell, but like a cross sell. I didn't take it because I was like, well, if I start talking baseball with this person, like you said, they're gonna find me out real quick. So.
Yeah, well, and it's okay if you don't have to know a lot. Just don't pretend you know a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're honest up front, says, I love baseball, but you know what? I'm a kind of a newbie here. I love it, but and they'll welcome you. But if you start lying to them about, well, I've been a baseball fan for 50 years and I know everything about, they're going to find you out in a minute.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's tough. It's tough to explain to people when they think of a leather wallet, they think of a wallet that you buy in a store, that the leather is thin, and this is baseball leather. It's really tough to do anything with that, because it's been used, it's been softened, and you can't skive that very easily, and sometimes that's why I always like the older gloves. I love the older gloves because they were a better leather, only much, much thinner, so you could put one of those together and still only come up with less than a half inch. Whereas if you did a 70s one, they've gotten thick then. They didn't split the hide as much. So, and it's tough for them to understand that, but that's okay. Not everybody needs to understand, but there you go. You prove that being a good customer service guy, you probably kept a sale that if you just said, okay, just send it back.
Yep.
You kept a sale and you may have made more sales.
Right.
See, that's what we don't, we think we can't think about today or next week. We got to think down the line a little bit, because if these people will spend $500 with you now, they'll spend $500 with you later on too.
Right.
Especially if somebody gets a hold of you and says, boy, I love this. Where did you ever get that? Well, those are your best promoters. And and they'll say, oh, that Princeton, he's a heck of a nice guy. He took care of me. He didn't try to, smooth me over with some BS or something. And that'll pay you dividends. I'm really sure of it. So
Yeah. Well, Les, I'm getting a notification here that this meeting is going to end automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little abrupt, but I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I certainly love hearing about your experience with baseball history, and any little tidbits of wisdom, not just about the business itself, but just baseball in general, are always appreciated.
If you really want to learn baseball from the ground up, do the 12 volume that God, I can't think of his name. It's a 12 volume set series that came out about baseball history, done by Ken Burns.
Okay.
Yeah, watch that. Watch it from beginning to end. So you'll learn a lot there. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have it up. So yeah, sounds good.
yes. All right. Well, you have a rest of the good weekend, and we'll talk to you here in the next coming week then, probably.
Sounds good. Thanks. You too, Les.
All right. See ya.
Take care. Bye.
That's it. It's going to do it for this weekend. In terms of goals for this coming week, I've already pushed out 2 new ad creatives, so I'm going to be monitoring those. I just got my press that I'm using to flatten the wallets, so I'm going to be focusing more on the craft this week rather than the business. I think I'll be focusing in particular on a very popular purse that we used to have in stock that I'm learning how to make now. My goal for the end of this week would be to be well on my way to making the first one. So progress is the goal. That's going to do it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.